Welcome to Module 5. In Module 5, we're going to give you a quick breakdown of the actual construction process across a villa. Now, the Dubai government has basically given an average cost of a villa. And roughly, when we discussed yesterday that there were private villas and investment villas, the average cost of a villa is around 1.6 million. We also showed you two examples of projects that we had signed where the cost was around $775,000 and $885,000. So in order to be very conservative, to give you a base foundational explanation, I'm going to walk you through the basics of doing a 1 million dirham villa. So this is one villa, 1 million dirhams, and we're going to walk you through the process. Okay, so first, what happens is phase 1. Now in phase 1, what makes it easier for me and you is if I give you some visuals and I draw it out. So we'll start with phase 1 and the mobilization. I'm going to draw this out for you. So this is your lot size. This is the lot of the property. Now the first thing that happens is that the property is fenced in to protect it. So the site fence is the first thing that goes up. And this is the site fence all around the property. The second thing that happens is you have to have a site office with your permits, basically your drawings and everything on site at all times in case of any inspection from the municipality. So we would set up a site office here. And I'm just going to put SO as site office. The site office has to have its own power supply. So there will be a generator set up on here, power supply. And then what happens is you also set up a water tank on site. So this is your water tank. Now, these are the first three things that are mobilized onto the site, and then it goes into basically your excavation. Now this is your structure. This is basically where the property is built. Now inside of here, you have essentially your excavation, which happens all inside here. I'm just going to give some small examples. That's the excavation being done. And then it goes into compaction. So once the dirt is excavated, it gets compacted down. And then it goes into PCC. Now PCC is your plain cement concrete. Plain cement concrete would go like this. And then it would go, then the foundation would be put in. And the foundation essentially is like this. Now in this phase, the property is pretty much done phase 1. This entire process takes around 20 days. 20 days to complete all this work. Then what happens is the cost for completion is around 70,000 dirhams. And then what happens is we submit a bill. We submit a bill to the client, and the client pays 100,000. Out of the 100,000, there's 10,000, which is 10% of every bill that is submitted, is kept for retention. Retention is basically kept as on the side. So when the property is completed, when the whole construction work is finished, the retention is kept generally for 1 year. In case something goes wrong with the property, something goes wrong with the foundation, something is, the property is not done in a correct way, the retention is kept and the retention is used in order to fix the property if there's anything. So this is almost like an insurance, almost like a guarantee that happens for around 1 year after the property is completed. Sometimes you can negotiate with the client to have a smaller retention. Rarely does it ever go less than 5%. Generally what happens is you budget 10%. 10% of every bill that you submit. So 10,000 is kept for retention, which leaves out of the 70,000 cost and 100,000 bill submitted with 10,000 gone for retention, it leaves about 20,000 cash. Now the 20,000 is your profit. It's your cash. Generally you don't take it out. You reuse and recycle for the next phases of the construction. Now let's go to phase 2. Now we're going to walk you through phase 2. Now in phase 2, I'm just going to quickly draw it out for you so you can understand. I'll walk you through the process. Now this is a zoom in shot of where we were before. Okay, we've zoomed in. Now these are the foundations. You have your neck columns inside. Now what happens is in phase 2, it goes into the solid blocks. Solid blocks are basically here. And these are your solid blocks. Then it goes into your tie beams. Now the tie beams basically go right over your solid blocks. So that'll go right over here, right on top. Okay? So the tie beams and neck columns are casted together. And then we go to the backfilling. And I'm just going to change markers here so you can see the difference a little bit. And so this is the backfilling. All that excavation that was done is basically now refilled, and the backfilling is done. The MEP, which is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, this happens all throughout the project. It doesn't happen in the very first phase, but once you get into the other phases, the ongoing work happens with MEP throughout the entire project. And so MEP, and I'll give you a small example, this would be considered your one washroom, okay, and then the piping out. And this would be another washroom here and piping out. Okay, then we'll go to the floor bed. And the floor bed, I'm going to draw with the same marker. It's like a mesh of steel here, like this. Okay, mesh of steel is the floor bed. Then it goes into the columns and slabs. And I'm just going to change the marker real quick so you can see the difference. This would be the column. Okay, and this would tie here like this. And then we would have your slab. So I'll just use the red again. This is basically your slab. Here, this is your slab. Okay, so this gets us through the actual phase 2 of the construction process. And in this process, the cost is around $100,000. The bill that we submit is $150,000. The retention, which again is always 10% of the bill, is $15,000. And then the cash is $35,000. Now this whole process again takes 1 month. So we are in phase 2. We are 2 months in now. We've made $20,000 profit in the first month. We've made $35,000 profit in the second month. Now let's go to phase 3. Okay, so this is phase 3. And in phase 3, I'm just going to draw it out for you again quickly. This is basically our 3D version of it now. And so you have this, you have this. Now look at it almost as this 3D version. Now inside here, we have basically our block works. So this is our block works. Okay. Now, on top of that block works, as I mentioned, the MEP, which is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, is always ongoing throughout the project. And so this would be essentially your conduits and your plumbing. And then the final piece in phase 3 is the plaster. And the plaster just essentially goes over here. So this is all plaster. This is all plaster. And we are done phase 3. Now in phase 3, the time duration is basically 1 month. The actual cost is around $150,000. The bill is submitted for $200,000. The retention is $20,000, and then the cash is $30,000. And we're done phase 3. Now let's go to phase 4. Okay, now we're in phase 4. So I'm just going to quickly draw this out for you again. In phase 4, basically, goes kind of like this. This is the structure. It's almost like a 3D version of the structure. Now, the manholes and drainage, which is the first step, this happens outside the structure. And so it's kind of like right here. Now this connects, and this drains out to the municipality line. Your manholes and drainage is done. Now we go to plumbing. Now basically this connects inside here. This would be essentially your, as an example of your plumbing. Okay. Now we'll go to the electrical. Now the electrical, remember we did the electrical over here as an example, and then the wiring is filled in the middle. This is the wiring inside the electrical. Then it goes to the flooring. Now again, it's almost like a mesh structure like this. Flooring is done. And then we go to the kitchen, toilets, and tiles. Now the kitchen, toilets, and tiles, I'm just going to give you an example. This would be, say, your kitchen. Okay, this would be your washroom. And then you would do the tiling inside of there. And then the final thing is the paint, internal paint, and this is all paint. This is all internal paint. This is all internal paint. And then the light fixing. And the light fixing, we had already made the connections and stuff, so light fixing would essentially be like wherever the lights are. So let's say there's lights here, and then these would be the light fixing. And we are done phase 4. Now in phase 4, this is where it's a lot of work. This takes a little bit longer in terms of time process. So the time for this is 2 months, 2 months time duration. Then the cost is actually around $200,000. We submit the bill of $300,000. There's $30K, which is retention, and then $70,000, which is cash. And we've now completed phase 4. Let's go to phase 5. Now we're in phase 5. Now phase 5, I'm just going to quickly walk you through it because there's a lot of work here. So if I draw it all out, I may lose you. I may lose my audience who's paying attention to us so far. So I'm going to quickly draw it out. Basically, This is the finished product. Okay, we have our external paint, which goes all along here. This is external paint of the house. Flooring for the rooms and halls on the inside. We have our boundary wall and our conduits. And then we have our boundary wall paint and our light fitting, which is again is on the inside of the project. We have our waterproofing, which is waterproofing the roof. And then this is the water tank, this is the water heater. Generally in a villa, this goes on top, and it provides it from the top. Then we have our bath accessories. So assume that this is the washroom, and then we have this is the washroom. We have our, let's say, a jacuzzi here, a tub here, a wash basin basically here. And then we have our switches and plugs, which is mixed into it. We have our interlock. Now, this is the structure. This is the outside, the boundary wall. This is what the interlock would essentially look like. And this interlock would go pretty much all the way around essentially. And then we have our finishing and cleaning. Now, when you're doing a construction site, you're doing a villa, there's a big mess left afterwards and throughout the whole duration of the actual construction. So at the end, there has to be a big cleaning job to make it look spick and span and have it ready for the actual client to come and say, wow, this is my dream home. You built it. It looks amazing. There is some minor other works. The client actually provides the windows, the aluminum, and things like that. This is not in our scope. We actually don't do the work. The work is given to an aluminum company or a window company or things like that. We actually are pretty much done here. Now, if the client requests any extra work, then it becomes in our scope and then we do the work, but we charge them for the work as well. But basically, just to give you a general overview, we are pretty much done here. Now, this is phase 5. Our cost was around $170,000. Our bill submitted is $250,000. Our retention is $25,000 and our cash is $45,000. Now this whole process takes around 2 months. So we are 5 phases in. The first 3 phases were 1 month, 1 month, 1 month. The next 2 phases are 2 months and 2 months. So that brings us to 7 months. Now in some cases, because of delays, because of materials not arriving on time, because of multiple other variables and factors, this extends from 7 months and it could go all the way to 8 months, 9 months, all the way up to 12 months. Now, depending on how efficient you are and how well you do things, this can be sped up. This can be sped up and then you can get things done in the budget that we've pretty much allotted here, which is 7 months. But there's a lot of external factors that are outside of our control, and so those have to be mitigated and minimized as much as possible, but they're outside of our control. So if they do occur, this extends the time duration. But all in all, if this is done in a proper way, it can be done very fast and it can be done around 7, let's say 8, 9 months maximum. This is including some of the external factors that we'll mention in pretty much the next video. And we'll explain to you some of the external factors like the risks and the things and what the mitigation processes are, what our SOPs are to deal with some of these things. So now you got the whole picture of a 1 million dirham villa, the whole process in 5 phases, the actual costs, the bills that we submit, the retention that is kept, and the profit that is made, and the time duration for this entire thing.